that thou wouldest be pleased to direct and prosper all their counsels to the advancement of thy glory, the good of thy church, the safety, honor, and welfare of our people. All this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, our most blessed Lord and Savior. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all now and forevermore. Amen.
The Senate is now in session. I told you were long in coming, caught in traffic.
Yeah, shouted back.
I can imagine.
Terrible. Tell me
A little bit.
how
A little bit.
You got things? You got the excuses now?
We just get the order of business.
Come to me with some more. Yeah, lazy one, if you really. Lazy one.
The clerk is in readiness. Please proceed.
Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Announcements by Your Honor.
Yes, I'm advised that I've heard from Senators Walcott, Adams, Franklin, Holder, and Tate to the effect that they are unable to be with us today for one good reason or another, and they've sent the excuses. Yes, I'm advised that the minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday, the 4th of December, 2019, are ready to be confirmed. We can do that. We can do it now.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the minutes of December 4th, 2019 be confirmed.
The question is that the minutes of the Senate held on December 4th, 2019 should be confirmed. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. And the minutes of Wednesday, the 4th of December, 2019 stand confirmed. Pardon?
You have a message.
Yes. Message, I'm looking for it though.
Check me.
Yes. The message from the Honorable the House of Assembly to the Honorable the Senate. I shall now read. The Honorable, the House of Assembly has the honor to inform the Honorable, the Senate, that at its sitting on Tuesday, the 3rd day of December 2019, the Honorable, the House of Assembly concurred in the amendments made by the Honorable, the Senate to the Company's Amendment Number 2 Bill 2019 and the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Amendment Bill 2019. And that message is dated the 3rd of December 2019.
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers.
Mr. President, I am commanded to lay the loan contract number 4342/0C-BA between the Government of Barbados and the Inter-American Development Bank regarding the National Tourism Program. I am also commanded to lay the Government of Barbados Inter-American Development Bank Loan National Tourism Program amendatory contract. Amendatory meaning there was just an amendment made to the contract.
Reports from select committees. Questions to ministers. Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries. Personal explanations. Motions relating to the business or sitting of the Senate are moved by a minister.
Mr. President, I beg to move that we sustain that this Honorable House will now suspend Standing Order 45-2 to complete the items on the order paper in their entirety in this sitting.
The question is that Standing Order 45-2 be suspended for the balance of the day's sitting. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and the standing order so indicated, 45-2, now is suspended.
Introduction of bills.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the following bills be read the first time. The Money Laundering and Financing of Terrorism Prevention Control Amendment Number 2 Bill 2019. The Returnable Containers Amendment Bill 2019. The Control of Disposable Plastics Amendment Bill 2019. The Companies Economic Substance Amendment Bill 2019. And the Land Tax Amendment Bill 2019.
The question is that the bills just mentioned, that they be all read a first time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Public business.
Public business is now the order of the day.
Order number 2, sir. Order number 2, in the name of the acting leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Money Laundering and Financing of Terrorism Prevention and Control Amendment Number 2 Bill 2019.
Mr. President, as I rise to introduce the Money Laundering and Financing of Terrorism Prevention and Control Amendment Number 2 Bill 2019, I am very much reminded, sir, that we live in a world where it is important that we play by the rules that the rest of us will have to play when it comes to financial services, anti-money laundering, and all that will keep this world safe from terrorists and others. This anti-money laundering bill, sir, it seeks to help Barbados to become more compliant with certain international standards. There are several vehicles, sir, for money laundering, businesses, banks, insurance companies, charities. The list goes on, sir. Any means by which we can move money, especially across borders, sir, subjects itself to the scrutiny of those who will ensure that money laundering does not become a thing that is entrenched and embedded and that continues. In Barbados, sir, we have certain regulatory authorities, including the FSC, that regulates insurance companies and other entities. We have the central bank that regulates banks as well. But there is a gap, sir, in the supervisory regulation as it relates to non-financial businesses and professions like lawyers and others who would be accountants who may be moving money for their clients across borders as well as within. And so this bill intends to bring all sectors into compliance. And in fact, this particular bill seeks to ensure that there is a compliance unit that is set up through the Anti-Money Laundering Authority. And this bill seeks to, Mr. President, to give clear specifics as to the role and the responsibilities of this unit. It seeks, indeed, we can see, sir, from the bill, that part of that responsibility would be doing the due diligence as it relates to the members in the schedule that it will be supervising, looking at record keeping. It will be using new technologies to enable it to monitor and to keep records, and it will, of course, report on suspicious transactions. And you will see in the bill, Mr. President, that there is the authority for this compliance unit to take action as well, so that it is not just a unit set up to monitor. It does have some ability to take action in specific ways. And among some of those actions that can be taken, should they determine that some of these non-business and non-banking businesses, non-financial, non-banking businesses, and these professions, should they deem that there is some suspicious activity, sir, they have the ability to seek information, and in the event, of course, that is through the normal court process, and to determine whether or not we would need to cease any assets or freeze any bank accounts, or to prevent people from completing transactions. And in this bill, there are certain very specific time periods and timelines by which this is given. There are penalties, sir, that are outlined in the amendments that are proposed. And there is also, sir, the opportunity for the compliance unit to examine the operations of a number of businesses, and not just, as I said, not just the non-financial business, but also professionals in that regard who may be considered in that way. Barbados, as you know, sir, is a member of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. We are subject to reviews under that arrangement. And you may recall, sir, that in 2011, Barbados would have had we performed very poorly on that review. In the subsequent years, Barbados, the then government, not this current one, did not necessarily take action to put Barbados in any much better position, and therefore it has been left to this government to seek, this current administration, to seek to bring Barbados in line and to ensure that our reputation is protected, sir. Before, there was a situation where it was just the law. If you had the legislation in place, that was enough. Now, the standards are becoming far more intense. And they're saying you can't just have the law. You now must show compliance and you must demonstrate effectiveness. And therefore, all of the systems that will contribute to the effectiveness of the implementation of that legislation must be in place. And that includes, sir, the compliance unit, which is the main subject of this particular legislation at this particular time. And, sir, it is with these few words that I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Question is that the bill under discussion be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say say aye. The ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of the bill under discussion in detail. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee. The approval is dispatched.
Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Beg to move that Clause 2 stand part. Mr. Chairman.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
I beg to move, Mr. Chairman, that Clause 4 stand part.
The question is that Clause 4 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Beg to move that Clause 5 stand part.
The question is that Clause 5 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Beg to move that Clause 6 stand part.
The question is that Clause 6 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 7.
Beg to move that Clause 7 stand part.
The question is that Clause 7 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Money Laundering and Financing of Terrorism Prevention and Control Amendment Number 2 Act 2019.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be so cited. That is, as the Money Laundering and Financing of Terrorism Prevention and Control Amendment Number 2 Act 2019. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. And the bill has been passed and will be cited as indicated.
Order number 3, sir. In the name of the Order Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Returnable Containers Amendment Bill 2019.
Mr. President, as I rise to introduce this bill, I respectfully ask the Senate that we treat items 3 and 4 as a cognate debate. Number 3 being the Returnable Containers Amendment Bill 2019, and number 4 being the Control of Disposable Plastics Amendment Bill 2019, given their direct relevance to the environmental health of the country. I would request the permission of the Senate so to treat.
The question is that items number 3 and 4 under public business, the Returnable Containers Amendment Bill 2019 and the Control of Disposable Plastics Amendment Bill 2019 be treated together as cognate matters. And all honorable members in favor, please so indicate.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it, and you may now proceed to treat the two matters, 3 and 4, on the order paper as a cognate debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this government continues to move with dispatch towards environmentally responsible practices. We see, sir, that while we alone cannot reverse or even stem the tide of climate change, while government alone cannot do the job to protect our environment, we recognize that we have to do it together. And these two bills, as you see together, is about having industry, individuals, government, and all of us come together to protect this fragile environment that we call Barbados and to ensure that we are able to leave a place that is suited for those that will come after us, our children and our grandchildren, and those who must also be allowed to enjoy this planet. The first bill, sir, speaks to the Returnable Containers Act, which, as you know, Mr. President, would have been passed in June 1986. But at that time, sir, the returnable containers, that act referred only to beverage containers. Since then, sir, the world has used many other types of containers made from materials that can be harmful to our environment, and to the extent that we cannot reverse the fact that they have been made, we can certainly seek to reduce the use of them by reusing them and recycling them, sir. This particular bill then seeks to expand the scope and remove the limitation on those containers that Barbadians can return and be able to collect an incentive for so doing. Sir, you know now you would see many conscientious people, including myself this morning. Sir, I packed a crate of Barbados Banks Beer, and I sent them off to purchase my fare for the current Christmas season, sir. And it was important that I was able to recycle those bottles at this time. And I think it is important. It was one. I see Senator Maynard is in the festive spirit and asking if I only got one. I guess he is seeking to have some more. Anyway, Mr. President, this is an important step for us because I think it signals the fact that this country is serious about recycling and that we are willing to revisit and consider ways in which we can improve what we now currently have in legislation that will be regulated. So, sir, this particular bill expands those containers or those items that can be recycled for a fee to include plastic, glass, and metal containers. And these are all outlined in Appendix 1 of this bill under consideration. They will include the polyethylene, terephthalate. This is a very different, it is the PET bottles, sir. You know, it is the PET bottles, the big PET bottles that we could not recycle before, sir. Remember, we could only recycle the smaller ones, but now the PET bottles are included. Also included is the high-density polyethylene. HDPE, and the low-density polyethylene containers that are 1 liter and over. Again, we are allowing people to recycle the larger sizes as well. And also other glass containers and other non-glass containers, as well as the aluminum cans, sir. And so we are recognizing that the world has changed, packaging has changed, containers have changed, and we need to expand the law to ensure. Now, sir, for those who will be looking to make some money, Senator Cummings this morning was talking to us about how much money she might be able to make on her returnable containers. Sir, it was for the glass and beverage bottle, a refund if you recycle these bottles and turn them into the appropriate places, 15 cents, sir. For those PET bottles, 10 cents. For the high-density polyethylene and the low-density containers that are 1 liter, over 1 liter, 5 cents. For the other glass containers, 5 cents. For the non-glass containers, 5 cents. And for the aluminum can, 5 cents. And so, Mr. President, I believe that this returnable containers bill will seek to ensure that we become more responsible as it relates to recycling. And sir, recycling and reuse, I must add, sir. And the second bill under consideration, sir, which is the control of disposable plastics. You will recognize, sir, and this bill, when it was previously passed through this House, would have received extensive debate. And so as not to delay this House further, sir, I will speak directly to the amendment to which it relates. This amendment relates to the fact that before we had said that as of January 1st, 2020, there would be no importation, manufacture, use, or disposal of petroleum-based plastics. And in particular, we were talking about the petroleum-based plastic bags at that time. Sir, this government is a listening government. And we have had conversations with the stakeholders in this industry, and they have said to us, sir, that there is a shortage of the necessary materials used to produce these alternatives on the international market, and that there are some challenges with regards to them meeting this January 1st, 2020 deadline. We have therefore said to them that we will extend this until April 1st, 2020, giving them that extra time, because we recognize, Mr. President, that we cannot simply have the laws in place. We must do a number of things. We have to educate people. We have to enable people. We have to facilitate them by giving the flexibility that's required in this situation. However, sir, we cannot delay much longer because the future of this country cannot be kept on hold. And we have heard discussed extensively, not only in this honorable House, but in other places, the impact of plastics on our environment and the fact that in some cases they live up to 1,000 years before they will even disintegrate in our landfills. That is destroying our environment. And so, sir, these two bills together seek to protect the environment. They seek to ensure that Barbadians are developing the habit of recycling in a way that is responsible to us all and responsible to the planet. And it is with these few words, sir, that I beg to move that these bills be read a second time. Yes. Pardon me?
Move that number 3.
Okay.
Read a second time.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Returnable Containers Amendment Bill 2019 be read a second time.
I recognize Senator Driggs.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Good afternoon to the Honorable Chamber. I would like to thank the Acting Leader of Government Business today for her quick but thorough review of both bills. And I'd like to just say a few words as it relates to the amendments before us. And I'll start where she ended as it relates to the amendments related to the Control of Disposable Plastics Act. I think that a bit more credit should be given to government for listening to the stakeholders in the industry and giving them that extra 3 months to get their house in order in relation to sourcing those biodegradable inputs that are needed to make the alternative plastics. And what, for me, that marked was necessity truly is the mother of invention and innovation. Because when the ban was first introduced, Mr. President, it was said that, you know, the industry could not transform or they could not transition to the biodegradables. But clearly, with that extra push and with the ban imminent in place, approaching, the industry has moved towards looking to source the renewables or the biodegradables. Sorry, Mr. President. But sir, we know that the petrol-based plastic bags, they can cause a lot of harm to our environment. On land, we know that you can have the harm of blocking of drains, flooding, and so on. And then once they get into the marine environment, they are a danger to marine life and other species in the environment like turtles, fish, and so on. So what I am saying, Mr. President, this morning is that I am happy that that transition is happening, and I'm happy that the government is making the amendments to delay the ban to April 1st, 2020, to ensure that those businesses stay in operation at this critical time, and that persons are kept employed in those businesses. And in doing so, they're also still holding firm that we must move away from petrol-based plastics being manufactured here in Barbados. And what I'll also urge those in the sector to do is not wait sometimes for the government to have a heavy hand to make those types of innovative transitions, but to do the research and make those transitions even in the wake of not having to do it. It shows that they can, and that this is something, more of a lesson learned, that there are things that we can do and we should do in Barbados as it relates to research and development, and clearly we're capable of doing it, Mr. President. And sir, speaking more now to the first bill, the item number 3, Returnable Containers Amendment Act. That bill, Mr. President, I think is a wider discussion on waste management and integrated waste management. I know that is something that's quite topical now in the media and in the press as it relates to government's introduction of the new garbage trucks that have come to the island. I believe the number is 10 that were brought through the port recently. And I'm surprised that you guys are not recently taken out. But the Returnable Containers Act, Mr. President, is about waste management in a serious way, and I'm happy that government has sought to extend the number of items that can be recycled, and you get a refund based on the items. But I believe that we can do a lot more. We can do a lot more. In terms of waste management, we have to find ways of how do we recycle more, how do we turn waste to wealth in terms of seeking economic activity from the waste that is generated that can be of productive use to us. How do we look at reusing some of the items that we throw away very easily? Even in my own household this morning, there was an item that broke, and the first thing that was said is, throw it away, I'll go and get another one. I said, no, you just need some glue, and the item can be fixed. So there's some simple things sometimes that you can do, but we're so accustomed to that consumerism behavior. You know, if something is broke, you throw it away and you buy something new. We no longer fix things, Mr. President. We throw them out. And I think once we can start to cultivate a practice where we start to reuse items, repair items, that can also be something that can serve us in good stead in the future. But more so, Mr. President, looking at recycling, there are some things I think that we could possibly also look at. And this is more so in relation to our collection system of garbage. I'm not sure if I spoke about this before in this chamber, but now that we have the new trucks on the road, I think one of the things that we could possibly look at is the strategy around collection. Mr. President, there is enough information, data, and technology for us to possibly come up with a more efficient way of collecting garbage. And I say that because there are some areas in Barbados that are more densely populated than others. And if we can start to pilot even collection points around the island that persons then take their waste to those collection points, I believe that that would reduce the amount of strain that is put on the equipment that is being used at the Sanitation Authority. Because I know that that was one of the critical things that we needed to get done. But in the long term, if we can extend the life cycle of the assets, the equipment that the SSA has, by introducing a more efficient way of using the resources that they have, I think that is something that we should look into in terms of the long run. Because if we come up with a more efficient way of collecting garbage at possibly collection points, you reduce the number of routes that you would possibly have, and you reduce the wear and tear on the equipment, and possibly then now have more equitable working hours for those persons who are engaged in working to collect the garbage across the island. And that can be done in a way that you utilize, let's say, for instance, the data that is collected in the census. You know not just how many households or how many homes are in an area, but you also know the amount of persons within those homes. And you then have the spatial data as well, so you can look at mapping your routes around where persons are located and how much garbage is being collected in those areas. And I say that because we are year on year collecting, or generating, I should say, more waste in Barbados. On average right now, we generate about 1,000 tons of waste or garbage a day. To put that into context, a grown, mature elephant is 1 ton in size. So that is to give you context in terms of how much waste that we're generating daily. And from 2005 to 2015, the increase has been about 20%. So in 2015, I don't know if the senator on the other side, who is versed in all things waste management, can speak to a more updated number. But in 2015, though, we did generate over 400,000 tons of waste here in Barbados. And I don't know what the recyclable numbers are even, but I did find on SSA's website that in 2015, we recycled only 16,000 tons and we exported that. So that's only about 4% of the waste that is being generated that's recycled and then exported out of Barbados. So, sir, what I'm calling for, now that we have these trucks and we're all happy that collection will become more regular, more frequent, is that we look at how do we extend the life cycle of the equipment that we already do have.
They came with engines.
Sir, I'm hearing a size that I really don't want to repeat. But nonetheless, a more, if from the goodly reverend, a more efficient way of dealing with our waste. And I start with the collection points as a pilot project because we already have a best practice for something like that. We spoke to it this morning in terms of bottle collections. You sort at home, and then you take it to the collection point where you know that they will be refunded. So if we can start to have that type of program now with other materials in our garbage system, then I think that that could be a step in the right direction. The acting leader of government business noted that we now move from 2 items being able to be refunded under the amendment in the Returnable Containers Act bill. And now we have 9 categories, ranging from 15 cents to 5 cents. And I think that that is something that has to be commended. Another best practice, Mr. President, as it relates to changing behavior around waste and waste management is about 5 years ago, you would not have seen that many reusable shopping bags around Barbados. But because of certain interventions, you now see persons using their reusable bags when they're going shopping. In another space and in another responsibility that I hold, I am engaged in retail, and Barbadians have a love affair with plastic bags. It's reducing now because of the intervention of the reusable bags, but I would catch someone, they would be purchasing, let's say, a Winter Fresh gum, and they would ask me for a plastic bag. You know, those are the types of behavioral changes that we have to start to move away from, where persons feel that they are doing something not just for themselves, but for the generation to come, and also for the environment. And that, for me, Mr. President, it shows that once persons have access to the change, once they understand why the change is happening, Barbadians are more than willing to come on board. So, Mr. President, as I said, I think one of the things in the long run in terms of waste management in Barbados could be those collection points, those central collection points possibly, to reduce the wear and tear on the equipment. And that will also then put a facility in place that makes recycling also a lot easier for Barbadians. And once we start to move towards changing the behaviors and moving persons towards recycling, reusing their items, particularly in this Christmas season where persons pick down their houses and they throw out a lot of items as well. I'm sure there are peak periods as well with the waste, crop over time, Christmas time. But to get into the habit of keeping your items and seeing if you can have another use for them. So with those few words, I would also ask that government does a sensitization program on those items now in the Returnable Containers Act, that they're allowed those refunds so that they know what they can recycle and they know what the worth would be. Because sometimes, although we may pass legislation, persons are not aware of what is available to them, and that is something that should be done, Mr. President. And as I said, sir, I would be brief, and with those few words, Mr. President, I support both bills, and I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator Drake. I now recognize Senator Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Senator who spoke said that the government was a talking government. It appears to be also an action government.
Thank you. Thank you. You come this side, you know.
Mr. President, I want to say that I support these two amendments in the entirety. However, Mr. President, we seem to have limited the size of containers on which you can get a refund at 3.8 liters, which I think is about a gallon. So I have noticed that lots of the 5-gallon containers that bring in cooking oil for commercial entities are lying around the place. And all the large 55-gallon drums that bring in toxic materials, there doesn't seem to be any clearly delineated path for disposal. And that concerns me because Senator McConney spoke about environmental health. And while these bills will hopefully reduce the amount of material going to landfill, we've not made any steps towards dealing with the things that will kill us. I spoke before, Mr. President, about batteries that we bring in that in other places there are clearly laid out rules for disposal, and we've not enforced them. Bulbs, we've moved to LED bulbs, and we have thousands of fluorescents that end up in the landfill that really probably shouldn't be in the landfill. Mr. President, we have alternatives now to plastics for single use and for food and various things like that. And I recently took the time when I emptied one to look at the bottom, and it did say biodegradable, but when I read the print, it also said it may require special facilities. So I need to ask, if persons are bringing these products into the country in large numbers, do we or will we insist that the products which they bring in must not require special composting facilities, which we do not have? Otherwise, we are adding quietly to the burden which we want to get rid of. Now, Mr. President, I recently went to a hardware store and I asked to purchase a product which we've heard a lot about recently, and it's causation of cancer, and there was a case in a large country where there was a large settlement over this matter. And I was surprised to see that we can still buy it freely on the shelves here, and you can buy it by alternative name. And I had to have to ask, well, if we know what it does, why are we still allowing it to be sold in this small country? Why are we still doing this? Roundup. Yes. Why are we still allowing it into the country? If it's not good enough for other people, it certainly can't be good enough for us. I'm pleased, Mr. President, that I looked at a newspaper and I saw some spanking new trucks, and I thought I recognized a colleague standing very casually next to them. And I was happy about the trucks and what it would mean, but I would like to ask that the Sanitation Service Authority make some steps to correct the inequalities in garbage collection. And I would like to suggest that those places which suffer most should be fixed first. So rather than hearing that some places get the garbage collected every day now, and some people are still getting it every 3 weeks, I would like to believe that those who were on the 3 and 5 week schedules will now come into 2-week schedules. Mr. President, I have not seen it addressed anywhere where we plan to deal with the rat problem. And this is the reason why I'm concerned. The rats, for years, long before this administration came in, were living on the garbage, and their numbers have increased. Those of us who have to travel at night see them on the roads, like pedestrians, lots of them. And when the garbage is more efficiently collected, the rats will not die. They will seek other sources of food. So they will move into the fields and eat the crops, and they will move into the comfortable houses and look for food. So maybe and we can't send back the trucks, and we shouldn't. So while we are dealing with the garbage collection problem, we should simultaneously deal with the consequences for getting rid of the rats, because if we don't, we will have a bigger problem. Now, no one has recently spoken about burning of garbage, and maybe it's a good thing that we haven't. But Mr. President, what this government appears to be doing, in my opinion, is the right thing. They appear to be having a well-thought-out, long-term strategy that will benefit the country when it comes to disposal of garbage and recycling with a long-term plan. And I would hope, Mr. President, that we do not see large, costly diversions into things that might be dangerous for the people of the country and destructive as we have been hearing about recently, with a now abandoned plan of garbage incineration on a large scale in this country. And I would like to think that the openness which we've seen in many aspects, and particularly with regard to the environment, will continue. And if I get only one Christmas gift, Mr. President, I've had it today. We're taking some serious steps so the next generation do not have to deal with some of the issues that we have to deal with. Mr. President, I'm obliged to you.
Senator Althea Wiggins.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. President, to say a few words on these two bills which I wholeheartedly support. I want to congratulate the government on the new garbage trucks. It was really a welcome sight for Barbadians, because there's been a lot of discussion going on in the country in terms of the garbage collection. And as Senator Maynard said, my garbage collection, to be honest with you, we were getting a garbage collection like every 4 weeks or so, and that's endurance. So I'm hoping that with these new trucks that are coming in, that the scheduling of trucks and so on to pick up garbage would be, you know, those of us who suffered a lot would at least get, you know, once a week, because in Rendezvous, they get once every week, and I'm like really surprised that Rendezvous will be getting garbage collections once a week, and we Endurance were going for like every 4 weeks or so. So it really was a very difficult time, and I know it takes a while when you order anything, you know, like trucks and so on, that most likely they have to be custom made and so on for the environment. What I would like to see, however, Mr. President, is that in terms of maybe the next set of garbage trucks, maybe the order has been put in already and that couldn't happen, that they would be mechanized. And mechanized to the extent that, you know, they're actually picking up the garbage things themselves, rather than the men lifting these heavy cans, excuse me, and so on, putting the garbage into the garbage trucks. It would assist them greatly in terms of their health and their backs and so on. Also, I would like to see the sweepers. The sweepers will be one of the things that you can put on order, where they can sweep by the side of the roads, and in cases where you have they cut grass and so on, they're left on the road. And years ago, as Senator Greenidge would know, we had donkey carts would pass and pick up the things by the side of the road. Now we have to wait a very long time, Mr. President, in terms of when this grass is cut, and sometimes if you get rainfall, they're swept back into the gutters and cause more damage to the environment. So it would be great, Mr. President, for us, you know, probably in the next order, that you order some sweepers that would really assist the communities. And with the 2020 people regathering and so on coming over to Barbados, let them see that we are in fact a clean environment. But you know, it's been difficult, and I would like such things to happen. One of the other things that I think that we should put in place, I don't know if it has to be legislated, Mr. President, is really the sorting of garbage. So you should have domestic waste, you should have food waste, and then you should have plastics. I know we have talked about recycling for a long time, but in other words, you will have 3 garbage bins at your house, and you would have a different type of garbage truck, and on a different day to collect the garbage. I think it would help a lot, especially with the food garbage, not only for households, but also for businesses. And I don't think that in this day and age that you should have to tell householders how to dispose of garbage, because each and every one of us should try to keep our surroundings clean. The government cannot legislate cleanliness to people. They should know exactly how to keep their surroundings tidy. So I believe, like with businesses in Bridgetown, I'm not sure of this, so Senator Grant, I know when you speak, you will speak extensively on it. If they have a garbage collection every day, and in terms of their disposal, they should be disposing the food, disposing the oils. I remember years ago, somebody used to go around collecting the oils from the various restaurants for recycling purposes, and I am not sure if that is still done. But if we continue and put all these measures in place, I think that we are going to make for cleaner Barbados. And even in terms of the environment, sir, I think that we should think about building public facilities in Bridgetown where people, and this is bathroom facilities, where normally if someone wants to go to the bathroom, they would have to go into Cape Shepherd. But you should build, look at building public facilities, because sometimes you pass, especially in Lower Broad Street, and there is this pungent smell that's coming at you. So I think that all this contributes to cleanliness of a country. And if we look to do things like these, we are going to make a better environment, a better Barbados. Senator Grant, and I want to congratulate you for the excellent work that you're doing as chairman of the Sanitation Service Authority. And I would hope that the few suggestions that I've made in terms of the various trucks, the sweepers, and the different ones for domestic food and so on, that you take that on board in your future planning. And I'm sure in the long term, Barbados will be a cleaner and friendlier place to be. So come 2020 with the regathering, when people come to Barbados, they will say, wow, Barbados is just like the big cities that we've come from, and we don't want to have the negativity. So we have to support the government with these different initiatives that are being put in place, so that at the end of the day, Barbados will be a cleaner and friendlier society. So, Mr. President, with those few words, I support both bills at this time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lots of the issues that would have been raised so far in this debate I wanted to speak on, but some of them are worth re-emphasizing, because I am very passionate about environmental issues, and I think we have a long way to go in this country before we really get to the point where we start to see a reduction in the amount of waste that we dispose, and in really seeing some good waste management practices in the country. I've heard a lot of kudos for Senator Grant already this morning. I don't want to be left out, because like all the others, every other Barbadian, I've been waiting with bated breath to see the arrival of these garbage trucks. And so congratulations to you, Senator Grant, and all of the rest of the individuals and persons who would have been involved in getting this venture up and going. But Mr. President, I want more to speak not so much on the issue of the new garbage trucks and being in a position now to collect the bundles of garbage that are on the streets, but because I think that is not going to solve the issue with the large amounts of waste that we are currently disposing of. And so I want to see, or I want to hear from the Minister of the Environment, from whoever, the Sanitation Services, the Sanitation Services Authority, the health personnel, all of the people who are involved. What I would like to hear is, when are we going to get a comprehensive statement, a comprehensive proposal for the management, the overall management of the garbage situation. Because as I said, what I'm looking to hear and what I'm seeking that the ultimate issue will be to see that the amount of garbage being disposed of is significantly reduced. And allied to that, of course, is the recycling of most of this garbage. So that would be an issue I would like to hear much more spoken on. In my reading, for example, I know that you look at countries like Sweden, countries like Germany, for example, and in fact, Sweden has now got to the stage where they'll have virtually no garbage to go to the landfill, and they're actually getting garbage from other countries in order to keep their recycling factories open. They now need that amount of material coming in. Now, we're not going to get there in any great hurry, but I think that it is important that we start somewhere. And I would suggest, for example, that in our public places, in our government as the largest employer in the country, every government office government can lead the charge in this area. Make it mandatory, for example, for in all the government offices, as Senator Wiggins was suggesting, we can do some level of sorting of the garbage at that stage. Government generates lots of paper, a lot of which is discarded. Over time, of course, with digitization, a lot of it may probably be reduced, but there's still a lot that is disposed of. And if we start to get into that habit of reducing and recycling the amount of waste, then we will be on our way. The point is that an untidy, unhealthy environment is going to impact significantly on our economic growth and stability. We, of course, as we know, and Senator Grant can speak more to this, we know, for example, that as our number one revenue generator, tourism, will be affected if we are not in a position to properly manage and to reduce the amount of garbage. Environmentally, we know of all the various issues in terms of the global warming and so on. And so when we talk about waste disposal, we should see it in terms of the holistic idea that it has impacts on so many other areas relating to health, relating to our economy, and so on. And we need, therefore, to have a significant education program going, encouraging householders, encouraging persons at the domestic level to be able to do some level of sorting of their garbage, even ahead of having to put it into legislation. I may have spoken to this on another occasion in here, but I would just mention it again for what it's worth. I do a certain level of recycling, Mr. President, and a certain level of sorting at my home. For example, I have bins. I have 3 bins where we put the plastic bottles, we put the glass bottles, and the other organic waste and so on. Now, my organic waste, I compost. I compost it myself. I just went on my way, when I'm traveling, I drop off all my water bottles and the other plastic bottles. I just go and drop them off. I'm not interested in the 2 cents or the 3 cents or whatever you get per bottle. But the point is that I just drop them off and I go. And, you know, if more of us started to do those little simple things, even ahead of it becoming mandatory, because I think if eventually government will very well have to legislate this whole issue of sorting and so on at that level. But these are things that I'm saying that we can do to save a lot of the garbage which goes to the landfill. And I have seen a significant reduction in the amount of garbage that I have to put out to be taken away by the Sanitation Services Authority. Mr. President, the other area in which I think is related and relevant is that I would suggest, and I would suggest some level of incentives perhaps to encourage this whole issue to which we speak, that this be given to the companies that are involved in recycling. Give them some incentives, perhaps to assist them in getting trucks and other equipment, and they themselves may be able to then become an integral part of the collection of the garbage in terms of going through the districts and collecting those items which are recyclable and which they will then use in their business. But I think, you know, perhaps tax incentive, I don't know, but I'm just saying that we can use our imagination, government can use its imagination to come up with some things which can encourage more of these companies to grow and to prosper. Again, at the individual level, I mean, I know, for example, from my researches that in some countries, for example, and this wouldn't probably so much be related to Barbados because we have a free education system, but I know in some African countries, for example, kids, families can actually take bottles, the plastic bottles and so on, to school, and they are used as a kind of a down payment against the fees, the school fees for the kids. Now, that, as I said, that may not relate to us because we have a free education system up to tertiary level. But what I'm saying is there are some other things you can do. I know, for example, there are other countries where you can dispose of the same bottles and you get some theater tickets, for example, or some other little chit which you can then use to reimburse or use to reduce the prices when you go into you know, the supermarkets or wherever. So there are some things that we can identify which we can quickly and easily implement to assist us in the reduction of the garbage situation. The other point which I just wanted to mention is I think I mentioned education before, but specifically, I think we need to introduce some of these things into the schools. At the primary school level, at the secondary school level, we need to get those students involved, because if we can get that learning and that education reinforced into those students at that level, I am sure that as they progress in life and as they grow older, they will continue to have those good habits, and then we will be seeing the fruits of our investment in terms of these issues. Just also to mention, I remember, for example, Dr. Colin Hudson, and I don't know, others may remember Dr. Colin Hudson, but when I visited Dr. Colin Hudson, for example, and he gave you drink, for example, he used to use disused containers, for example, old Biko containers, yogurt containers, and so on, which he used to to serve the drinking. Now, we may not be that as passionate, or we may not get to those levels. But the point is that the more we educate ourselves, the more we educate our children into these issues, we can see the possibilities for being able to do more of this recycling that we are trying to get our citizens to do. And so, Mr. President, it is with those few words that I am happy to support these two bills, and I trust that as we move forward, as I asked for before, we will see this comprehensive report for our garbage management as we go forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Terry. I now give the floor to Senator Greenwich.
Mr. President, I almost wanted to apologize to Senator Grant because, to be quite honest, my name was not down to say a word at all. But I just raised certain one point, Senator Grant, 1 point and 1 point only. And it has to do with the safety of the worker. Because I realize, Mr. President, that the more trucks you have on the road, it also means the more workers, the more drivers you begin with, the more drivers you're going to have. And as a corollary to that, the more workers you're going to have now to look out for who are manning those trucks. And I believe, sir, that sanitation must sit down with these workers and should ensure that those who work on those trucks have the training necessary for doing that job. And there's a reason why I say, I wouldn't go into that reason because I don't want it to be too long. But sir, I think what should happen is that the older and the more experienced sanitation workers who work behind those trucks should sit down with them. If we have some new ones coming on, I think we're going to have them, and should teach them how to do their lifting. In particular, their lifting. These injuries to the backs of those workers, I can think of about 3 instances where workers have sued the sanitation department. Sometimes I think it is the workers' fault. They lift the wrong way, even though there's a handbook that tells them how to lift and tell them that they should take out the garbage and then test the can and so on before they lift it. Perhaps some of them want to show how strong they are and so on, and eventually end up hurting themselves. And I think sanitation must let them know, look, never mind how strong you are, do not take that risk. The older fellas, I believe, can do some of the training. Believe it or not, sir, there are extremely dangerous hazards. They're dangerous in that particular work. You wouldn't believe it, sir, but some of them are still getting cut with glass. People have panes of glass and so on, sometimes just wrapped around with a bit of paper or something of the sort. Some of them, sir, cut by corned beef tins and those things. And these are things you have to let them know, especially the new fellas who might be going on, that you have to look out for those things. Yeah. But sir, that as I said, I have 2 or 3 more notes, but that is the main point that I wanted to make, that make sure that those workers are trained, and some, as I said, some of them with their backs, I know one fella has suffered a lifelong injury. And I really mean a lifelong injury because he tried to lift a can that was too heavy. And he didn't get a lot of support from the other fellas who were his co-workers, because I think he did it against the advice of them. And it was something he was trained to do to show off once in a way. So I think sanitation should take that advice, and Senator Grant and the others just make sure that they have the appropriate training. Those four, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Senator Grant, your hours come, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm very happy today to be here in support of these two pieces of legislation for consideration by this honorable chamber. I think that, as has been pointed out before, that both pieces of legislation are very important, and both of them will help us in a significant way. Of course, the Returnable Containers Act, the amendment to that act, facilitates for a larger number of containers now having a refund value. Sir, as you may know, that when the act was first introduced, those containers that had a refund value, the majority of those were removed from the waste stream. And it is therefore the expectation that with the refund value, and I believe the schedule to the amendment provides the refund value for all of the containers. And I think it is reasonable to expect that with the refund value, you will find that a lot of those items will be removed from the waste stream. And therefore it means that we will probably be able to extend the life of the landfill. I can't say, sir, how long that extension would be, but I do know that it is presently being speculated that the landfill would have another 2 to 3 years. And therefore, we have to make a decision very soon with respect to the overall waste management. That is going to be very, very critical. So, sir, my understanding is that there will be the bleach containers, squeezy, and those kinds of things now will have the refund value, and that they would go from the waste stream. You know, sir, we very often speak to the compactor trucks or the garbage trucks. We don't very often speak to the wider issues of equipment that the Sanitation Service Authority is utilizing. You know, sir, there was a situation 8 years ago. There was no landfill compactor. What that meant was that there could not be proper compaction at the landfill. There had to be the utilization of skid steers or bobcats to deal with the compressing of waste at the landfill. I'm happy to report, sir, that the Sanitation Service Authority has received a Bourg-Mag landfill compactor, and that is going to assist significantly with operation at the landfill. The Barbadian public generates, sir, when the waste characterization study was done in 2015, it indicated that at that time, Barbadians were generating 400 tons of garbage a day, or 1.43 kilograms per person. And that study, sir, and if I could just make some reference to that, that study, sir, spoke to the issue, like I said, of the municipal solid waste, and all that means is the regular garbage. And there was a breakdown of the different type of waste. Paper and paper board products would have been between 10% and 23%. Glass between 2% and 8%. Metal between 3% and 6%. Textiles between 7% and 10%. Organics between 25% and 41%, which is a significant element. And I want, sir, to spend a little time speaking to the issue of the waste. But before I get there, let me also make this point. Recently, I was on a site visit, and the officer from the Sanitation Service Authority pointed out a number of different containers to me that were just thrown by the side of the road as litter. And she indicated to me that with the amendment to this bill, to the Returnable Containers Act, that those kinds of items would be removed, and that you could expect that there would not be as great an impact with respect to drainage. She also reminded me, sir, that about 2-3 years ago, there was a drainage exercise that was carried out in Bridgetown, and there were numerous bags of containers that would have been taken from the drainage. So that with the bill, we are also anticipating that we will see an improvement in the drainage, and of course, sir, an improvement with respect to public health. Because the reality is that a lot of those containers, there's water, you will get the breeding of mosquitoes, and we know about the kind of ailments and diseases that the mosquitoes can carry. So I think, sir, that is a very positive thing. Not only the extension to the life of the landfill that can be expected, but we can also expect that there will be some positive impact with respect to drainage and also with respect to public health as well. I also should say that a lot of those items do make their way to DC, and therefore the bill which deals with the control of disposable plastics, that is very important, because it allows us to better manage those items as they go into the sea, because we would not want, sir, to harm our marine environment. We don't maybe necessarily place as much or speak as much to the marine environment as we do to the land environment, but our marine environment is certainly extremely important to us. So as I said, the waste characterization study would have indicated that between 25 to 41% of the municipal solid waste was made up of organics. And a lot of that, sir, is yard waste. So very often, Barbadians cut the grass around the house and they bag the grass and they leave the grass there. There are times that the Sanitation Service Authority is not able to immediately collect that yard waste. Sir, I would have reported to this house before that with the full complement of garbage trucks, the SSA would no longer need to engage the private waste haulers. But we would have been having some discussions, and we are exploring the possibility of utilizing the private waste haulers to assist us in the collection of the yard waste. That is very important, so that while we have a situation where we have more garbage trucks, at the same time we are able to deploy the private waste haulers to assist us now with the collection of yard waste. Sir, we have 4 private waste haulers that we are presently utilizing, and of course, sir, we will be working with them then to assist us with the yard waste. Sir, if I could just speak a bit about these new garbage trucks. Sir, of course, sir, on Saturday morning, persons heard me singing the song, I Am Dreaming of a White Christmas. Of course, there would have been those who felt that I maybe would have been thinking about going to New York or somewhere where there is snow. But sir, when they saw the trucks coming off of the ship, they recognized that the trucks were white, and therefore that was the white Christmas, sir, that I was dreaming of. Sir, not simply for myself, but sir, for all Barbadians, because it is important, sir. It is important that we are able to enhance the number of garbage trucks that we have. We have been having, sir, as I said before, a significant challenge with respect to our equipment, with respect to our trucks. And we have some trucks known as freight liners, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And those trucks, sir, have been continually breaking down. So that we are extremely happy that we have these 10 new trucks. Sir, let me just say that those 10 trucks were trucks specifically identified and ordered because we heard the concerns of Barbadians. Essentially, Barbadians were saying, look, you order trucks, and the trucks are taking too long. The truck, sir, that we would have ordered.
Check Hansard for when you say the trucks was coming.
Sir, we had put in an order for 12 purpose-built garbage trucks. Those purpose-built garbage trucks, as I would have indicated to the chamber before, the chassis were built in Japan. They were then shipped to Iowa. The bodies were built in Iowa. The electrical and all the other works being undertaken in Iowa. So we've received 2 of that order of 12 compactor trucks coming to Barbados. So there are going to be a further 10 trucks coming to Barbados out of that order for 12. Let me say, sir, that, and I should make reference to some of the type of trucks that we have, because we have 2 large hybrid split-bodied rear-loaded refuse collection compactors, and those split bodies allow for different type of waste to be put into the truck. So and I'm going to speak very briefly with respect to the overall recycling that you can expect. We also would have 2 mini refuse collection compactors, 2 small, 3 medium, 3 large. Sir, the reason why I reference these is to let you know that we are not simply looking at one type of truck, because the terrain across Barbados is different. And we have to ensure that we have the necessary equipment to properly deal with the collection of garbage. So, and while I'm on it, sir, I know Senator Wiggins did make reference to a sweeper, and we do have on order 1 industrial sweeper as well. And we would, of course, look at utilizing others. So that we are on our way, sir. There is still quite a bit that has to be done. Of the 10 large garbage trucks, those trucks this morning, sir, at 7:30 a.m. would have been at the licensing authority to be weighed and all the inspection done and all of that. The manager of SSA is in the process now of getting those trucks insured. We are going to get the SSA decal, you know, the little sign that says SSA, and we will put one on each side of a truck. And the trucks are to get out there and to start the work of collection of the garbage. I've asked, sir, that be done by this evening. And you know, sir, this process has really taught me about a government at work and a government that can get things to happen. On Saturday night, I was speaking with a friend of mine, and he said to me, well, Rudy, I would expect then in another week that you would have the trucks operational by the time you go through the whole process of licensing and inspection and all that. I said, no. That is too long. And the reason why we've been able to get things to move quickly is because we have had good cooperation. It's not only by the management and staff at the SSA. We've had significant support from the Barbados Port Inc. Senator Cummings would have been in the port with us on Saturday morning, giving significant assistance and marshalling the troops. We've had the the Ministry of Finance officials, the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance. We've had Customs as well assisting us significantly in making sure that we are able to get those trucks out in a timely manner. And I want to say, sir, that we should use that now as the model, because time, we don't have time put down. We don't have time to waste. We have to make sure that we properly utilize all of the time that we have. And I heard Senator Drakes making reference to the need to change behavior. And I think that that is very, very important. You know, if you don't change your behavior willingly, it will be imposed upon you. And when I heard Senator Drake speaking, I remember the story I heard of a Trinidadian during the oil days when the money was flowing. And this Trinidadian had a leg of pork. And he wanted to bake the pork, and everything was fixed up and thing good and all of that, seasoned up and thing proper. And then when they went to put it in the oven, the leg of pork was too big for the oven. And the Trinidadian says, no, not good. Send out and buy a new stove instead of cutting the pork. You understand? And I only made that point to say that you have to change your behavior in such a way that it contributes positively to what it is that you are doing. But your point, Senator Drakes, is well made. Someone, sir, did show me a post on social media where someone made the claim that the SSA will now spend between $10,000 to $15,000 to paint each truck, and suggesting that there was some kind of steel in there. So let me make this statement definitively. The trucks will not be painted. The trucks will just have the decal, and the trucks will get to work. That essentially, sir, that is what needs to be done. So, sir, as I said, we will utilize the private waste haulers with respect to the collection of the yard waste. Let me just speak very briefly to the landfill. Because, you know, once we start to have a situation where there is the collection of the yard waste, and we start then to focus on things like plastic and paper products. And sir, I'm just looking for a document I have. I can't go into the details of the document because it has not yet been fully discussed by the cabinet. But I do want to alert members of the House that we are looking at the overall program of recycling. And very shortly, the Sanitation Service Authority has been in discussion with the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. There is a comprehensive proposal that will be put to the cabinet dealing with recycling, dealing with the different types of bins that will be utilized. So I want to give you the assurance that we are indeed looking at those matters to ensure that we are able to put those kinds of policies and procedures in place. The landfill, as you know, sir, in fact, a landfill attracts a lot of, I believe the term is vectors, that is the term of which would be a lot of flies and a lot of rodents. What is important now that we have that yard waste being collected, we can use that yard waste as cover for the landfill. And the cover essentially would stop the access to the waste by the flies, the rodents. You have stray dogs as well that would go to the landfill as well. So our expectation is that once we put that measure in place, we will also be able to have additional cover that we can utilize for the landfill. Let me say, sir, as well, that I think that the provision with respect to the amendment to the Returnable Containers Act also provides an opportunity for further entrepreneurship. I am aware that there are persons who would have, with the introduction of the act started businesses to deal with those containers. And I believe that that is something that we are going to see continue with respect to when those items are chipped and compressed and all of that. There is the opportunity to export the chip recyclable items, and which provides an opportunity for foreign exchange earning. But it also provides the opportunity as well to use such an item as a source for energy. And we are having some discussion with our cement plant to see how we could progress in that matter. So that is something that is very critical and very important to us. Of course, sir, I want to encourage Barbadians to also play their part. I believe it was one of the senators spoke to the issue about garbage in town. I believe it was Senator Maynard that made reference to garbage in Bridgetown. And I want to encourage the businesses in Bridgetown to properly buy and put in containers the garbage and particularly the food items. This is a challenge and an issue for all of us, and we have to ensure that all of us do our very best to keep Barbados clean. I can report to you, sir, that the Ministry of Health does have an enhanced rodent eradication program. I know that because the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association and the Tourism Development Corporation has been working in partnership with the Ministry of Health, because this is a matter, of course, that is of concern to us and should be of concern to all Barbadians. But it requires, sir, that all Barbadians participate, that all Barbadians ensure that they play their part in facilitating the proper disposal. Sir, you would have heard recently the Prime Minister made reference to a national cleanup campaign. Up to, I believe it was yesterday, and Saturday and yesterday, that the 360 persons being employed through the National Conservation Commission was being facilitated, and they are getting to work. In fact, sir, I believe that as we speak, sir, they are working. But I want Barbadians to recognize that it is not simply the responsibility of government, it is not simply the responsibility of a government entity, but in reality, it really is the responsibility of all of us to ensure that we are doing our part. If we don't do it willingly, then of course you will have to look at legislation. And I want to say, sir, that it is critical that as we amend acts and as we bring new pieces of legislation, that we ensure that the enforcement element is also there, because it makes no sense having legislation and that legislation is not being properly enforced. But sir, I am very confident that the government with which I am associated will ensure that the appropriate enforcement measures are taken. And I'm asking Barbadians, therefore, with the existing legislation, there's provision for all Barbadians to have a container, to have a bin outside their houses. And I'm asking all Barbadians to comply. You know, sir, I told this house already that I am a Trekkie. And I like Star Trek Voyager. And I've referred to the character on Star Trek Voyager 7 of 9. And sometimes 7 of 9 is, something is communicated to her. And she says, I will comply. And sir, I want Barbadians to comply with the existing legislation to ensure, sir, that we continue to function in a manner that is in the best interest of Barbados. Sir, in conclusion, therefore, I think that the legislation is very important. I think that it takes us forward we're going forward in the right direction. I think it allows the opportunity for that refund value, and that we will see businesses that will be created around this amendment. I think, as I said, it's going to help with public health. It's going to help in terms of drainage. It's going to assist with the life of the landfill. And I want us, sir, to recognize that these amendments are not amendments which simply stand on their own, but they're really all part of a comprehensive plan and program by government to properly deal with waste management in Barbados. Sir, we may not always get everything right, but sir, we will continue to ensure that through our actions that we will take Barbados forward, and that we will continue to do what is right and in the best interest of Barbados and all Barbadians. Sir, I want to take this opportunity to wish yourself as president and all senators a very good and enjoyable Christmas. I want to wish you, sir, a sober. I'm hearing on the side that it should be a sober Christmas. But I want you, sir, and all honorable senators, along with the staff and the support team of Parliament, to have, sir, a very merry and enjoyable Christmas. And I also wish you a very healthy and prosperous 2020. And be assured that the Sanitation Service Authority will continue to enhance its operations to ensure, sir, that we will create a better life for our people. I'm obliged to you.
Will now wind up.
You know, Mr. President, I have never seen a Senate so excited about garbage. And we have heard about garbage trucks. Senator Grant now delivers white Christmases to Barbados. Santa, our new Santa. And we have talked about, in all seriousness, sir, too, the arrival of the trucks, the scheduling, the sorting, and creating the right kind of framework for Barbados to truly be able to manage our environment and our waste in a way that is meaningful. Senator Drake spoke about the fact that the hand of government doesn't have to be in everything, especially this, that people really and truly need to take an important role in operating on their own and choosing to recycle in a meaningful way. She spoke about the fact that she is happy with regards to the work that we are doing with regards to listening to people, with regards to delaying the start of the disposable plastics legislation, given that it allows businesses to stay in operation during this time and for people to also stay employed. Senator Maynard, it will go down in history, and we will keep it very clearly that you called us a government of action. And sir, we thank you very much for that. We agree. We are unanimous in that regard. Testimonial, that is what Senator Greenwich says. We are mindful, as you said, you made a very good point, that we need to be mindful that while we are promoting recyclable, that we have to recognize that not all recyclables are created equal, and some of them require specific equipment, and that we need to make sure that we are managing the situation in such a way that we don't create a bigger problem where we don't have the right, we're recycling, but we don't have the right equipment and facilities to be able to accommodate that. You also said that you were happy that government was moving towards a longer-term strategy, that this was not just a piecemeal attempt at doing things ad hoc, but that there is a general strategy. And sir, you will notice that that is the case with all of government's actions at this point in time. Our manifesto bears testimony to that in significant ways. Senator Wiggins spoke of the sorting of garbage by households and businesses, and adding sweepers and other types of equipment to understand that the whole waste management process involves more than just the picking up of garbage, but it involves the entire cleanliness and management of the systems that contribute thereto. Senator Nurse talked about developing the habit even before the laws come into place, and the need for us to create incentives and new ways to get people to participate and recycle. And that it is important for us to make sure that the students, the younger people, are engaged in the process. Senator Greenidge made a very important point. He talked about the fact that in doing all that we do, we need to ensure that there's workplace safety, and that in fact we are helping all of those who play such an important role in helping us to manage our waste, to manage the risk of improper lifting and other practices that could be detrimental to their health. Senator Grant, Mr. Santa Claus himself, he spoke about cleanup. That government has indeed played its part, and I want to compliment Senator Grant and the sanitation department, the board, for really and truly making this a time for everyone to smile. And he made the point also that government has played its part, but businesses and households must do so willingly. And he also spoke about there being a need for the enforcement of legislation. All in all, Mr. President, sir, this discussion, this contribution to this debate was really very good. And I think if we could wrap it all up, there is a need for us to educate, there's a need for us to facilitate, there is a need for us to innovate, there is a need for us to regulate and find special ways for people to participate. And it is therefore with these few words that I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Even though we've been discussing items number 2, 3, and 4 together, I think now we will hereafter depart and deal with each one separately. So the question is that the Returnable Containers Amendment Bill 2019 be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. That bill has been read a second time.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for further consideration of the Returnable Containers Amendment Bill in detail. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee on that bill.
Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 4 stand part.
The question is that Clause 4 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the schedule be the schedule to the bill.
The question is that the schedule be the schedule to the bill. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The President has reported, the chairman has reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read the third time.
The question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Returnable Containers Amendment Act 2019.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be cited as the Returnable Containers Amendment Act 2019. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. You think the ayes have it?
Order number 4, sir, in the name of the
Bill has now
honorable
been passed
acting...
and will be
Sorry.
cited as the Returnable Containers Amendment Act 2019. Sorry.
Order number 4, sir. In the name of the honorable acting leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Control of Disposable Plastics Amendment Bill 2019.
Mr. President, having treated this as part of the cognate debate, I now move that we read this bill the second time.
The question is that the first cousin of the bill just passed, do now pass second reading. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
It is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of this bill in detail. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
The question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Control of Disposable Plastics Amendment Bill 2019. Act 2019.
The question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be so cited. That is to say, as the Control of Disposable Plastics Act 2019. Amendment Act 2019. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. The bill has now been passed and be so cited. That is to say, as the Control of Disposable Plastics Amendment Act 2019. how much time we can take on the next?
So next, if nobody's talking, we can finish both of them. Mr.
Companies are like dogs. You ready, kid? You ready for fight?
Order number 5, sir. In the name of the acting leader of the Senate, Honorable Acting Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Companies Economic Substance Amendment Bill 2019.
Mr. President, necessary compliance with global legislation, regulations, monitoring, and reporting in the interest of protecting Barbados's international relationships is now a staple in how we do business in and with the world. Over the last year, sir, Barbados, through our International Business Unit, has been in ongoing communications with the requisite Directorate General of the European Union as it relates to the very the Business Companies Economic Substantive Act. And sir, as recently as earlier this month, the two, Barbados and the European Union, we were in specific consultations on the extent to which Barbados's Companies Economic Substance Act meets certain standards that comply with EU criteria. Sir, there were some areas flagged for revision, and we collectively agreed to move swiftly to address them. Barbados is committed, sir, to protecting and strengthening our international relationships through legal and regulatory compliance, particularly in circumstances where we know that our competitiveness and our investment prospects could be at risk. The compliance to which this conversation between Barbados and the EU most referred was on Criterion 2.1 of the European Union's Tax Governance Initiative. And that, sir, speaks to the fact that jurisdictions, and I quote, sir, jurisdictions should not facilitate offshore structures that are not reflective of real economic activity. And therefore, economic substance has become a significant buzzword, and not more than just a buzzword, a requirement in terms of companies that are domiciled in our countries being able to benefit from the international, from the tax regime, which we have, which you would have heard actually late last year, around the same time, we would have brought into place in Barbados. Sir, why we are doing this right now is because we have a date on January 16th of 2020. Barbados, I am informed, sir, will be reviewed by the European Union to consider our economic substance framework and seeking to determine our status on the list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. And we were told, sir, that updated information must, including if there are any adjustments that we've made and we've agreed to do, would need to be in hand by January 8th of 2020. The specific concerns, sir, that have been raised and which are addressed in this bill that's before this House is the exchange of information provision contained in Section 9, as well as Section 7, sir. And in in particular for Section 7, it is a simple change, sir. It's a change of title. The current title now says failure to provide evidence of tax residence outside of Barbados, and they asked for some clarification, some clarity to be brought to that. And so the proposed title in this bill for Section 7, new title, would be tax residence outside of Barbados. Simplified amendment. Additionally, sir, the exchange of information clause, which they said was inadequate, did not speak specifically to the case of high-risk intellectual property companies incorporated in Barbados. And so, sir, the amendments that are before us in this House will seek to address that, sir. These are simple but necessary, urgent amendments that we need to make to ensure that we remain good global citizens as we know we are, but that others will continue to perceive us the way that we know we are. And sir, it is with these few words that I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time.
Senator Driggs?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to quickly just state a few things. This bill before us in terms of these amendments to the Companies Act is very much similar to the bill we had earlier in terms of compliance and being in a global environment where we want to remain competitive and to ensure that our regulatory framework is up to date and is compliant to the standards that are being set upon us. I am happy that the government is keeping abreast of what needs to be done in order for our regulatory environment to adhere to those rules and regulations being placed upon us. The acting leader of government business noted we have a deadline date of January 16th, 2020 for that review, but we have to make those changes before then. And I think that it is prudent on all of us to ensure that in this environment where we are also trying to put the Barbados economy back on track, there's very little room for us to be delinquent in matters such as these. And given the time-sensitive nature of these regulations that need to be in place, Mr. President, I will not delay the House to any extent to make any further contributions at this time. So, Mr. President, with that intervention, I'm obliged to you.
Question is that the bill under consideration.
Mr. President, I thank Senator Driggs for that contribution, and I beg to move that this bill be now read again a second time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of the bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honorable Senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Companies Economic Substance Amendment Act 2019.
Question is that the bill under consideration do now pass and be so cited. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. And this bill is now being passed and will be cited as the Companies Economic Substance Amendment Act 2019.
Order number 6, sir. Order number 6, to name the honorable leader, acting leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Land Tax Amendment Bill 2019.
Mr. President, as I rise to introduce the Land Tax Amendment Bill 2019, it bears noting, sir, that managing our land tax situation is part of a bigger picture of how this government is adjusting and managing responsibility and liability, load and benefit of taxation in general. I am also mindful, sir, that things happen in life and in business that stand in the way of people's good intention to pay their taxes. Businesses experience downturns, sir, that negatively impact their finances. They lose customers, they lose markets, they get pushed out by competition. Technology disrupts their sector, they are not able to keep up. There are lots of reasons, sir, why businesses may default on their financial obligations, even to government, on taxes. Likewise, sir, individuals, people, too have financial crises. Some of them are self-made, and some of them are otherwise. People lose jobs, breadwinners die, credit cards and other debt strangle their finances and push them into cash flow problems. The list goes on, sir. And while government may not be responsible for people or businesses falling into these situations, government, in the country's interest, still has to find ways to work with our corporations and our individual citizens, whatever their circumstance, to ensure that they discharge their responsibility to stay current with their taxes and settle arrears as swiftly as possible. That, sir, is while government itself also seeks to settle its own arrears to people and businesses for various refunds. You may recall, sir, that this current government administration has worked diligently and quickly as part of the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program, BERT, supported by the IMF, to settle our arrears at all levels. You will notice, sir, that government has started to make right its affairs with Barbadians by paying arrears of income tax and VAT refunds left owing by the last administration. We have done that with dispatch, despite the fact that this country is in a financial crunch. You will notice, sir, that this government, this Barbados Labour Party administration, has systematically been removing arrears of every kind from the financial story of this country, not just to manage debt, but also to instill financial discipline in the management of this country's affairs. You will notice, sir, that this administration has been both empathetic and diligent in doing so. We have shown flexibility in giving amnesty, and we have been diligent in following up. A government of action, sir. Now, sir, individuals and businesses who owed arrears of land tax from April 1st, 2001 to March 31st, 2018 would be entitled, according to the Prime Minister and the Minister responsible for Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment. She said this in her budget and her financial statements and budgetary proposals of June the 11th, 2018, that these persons, for arrears during that period, 100% of the penalties and interests would be waived. And that this waiver would only apply, however, if persons paid off the arrears in full or made arrangements to pay them off before the deadline was given. You may recall, sir, that people were given that period of amnesty between July 1st, 2018 and May 31st, 2019. They could come forward and they could work out an arrangement with BRA. Originally, sir, that amnesty period was just 6 months, from July 1st, 2018 to December 2018. However, there was an extension to May 31st, 2019. The government has given extra time, and we also give empathy to work with that. We are now working with this bill to ensure that we're able to deliver on the commitment that we made to these people and to ourselves. You will recall too, sir, that when our Prime Minister and our Minister responsible for Finance gave amnesty with regards to land tax, she also gave amnesty on other taxes as well, where people could come in and bring themselves to rights with the government. Some of those taxes were the VAT, the personal income tax, including PAYE, and corporation tax. This bill will allow the government to do again what it says it would. And the second aspect of this bill, so it not only deals with the waivers of penalties and interest for the period specified, it also secondly addresses the matter of write-offs in this bill, where additionally this land tax amendment bill 2019 provides for a write-off as an accounting adjustment for taxes, penalties, and interest for the period April 1, 1981 to March 31st, 2001. Sir, this does not mean that people do not still have to pay their taxes. They still do. And sir, recently you would have seen in the press, perhaps, properties that were identified for sale under set criteria by the Barbados Revenue Authority. Now, those properties would have been owing land tax, either continuous delinquency or, in fact, the amount that was owing over an extended period of time. And there is, sir, in this act, as you will know, there are criteria, set criteria, that will consider years outstanding, the amount outstanding, or even both. These properties are liable for sale when the taxes have been in arrears and remain unpaid for a period that is also specified in the Land Tax Act. There's a tax arrears management unit at BRA that looks after this matter. And so, sir, this government is prepared to do what is necessary to encourage tax compliance in a way that is to the benefit of this country, while we ourselves as a government seek to address our obligations in processing tax submissions in a timely manner, as well as in delivering the refunds that are necessary, including those that were left unpaid by the previous administration. Sir, it is with these few words that I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
I recognize Senator Drakes.
Mr. President, the bill before us, Mr. President, I believe is one that's actually non-contentious. And I think in some respects it seeks to kind of balance the scales as it relates to land tax and the issue of land tax. In the budget that was presented by the Honorable Prime Minister, we had some changes to the land tax. And there were a number of increases that were announced to increase the amount of revenue being generated to reach that primary surplus of 6% under this IMF program, Mr. President. To just state those increases, we had residential properties valued at $450,000 and up to $850,000, now paying 0.7%, an increase of 0.25%, and those above $850,000 acquiring now a tax of 1%, up from 75%. Non-residential increased by 0.95% from 0.7%. And then we also had the inclusion of a tax on idle lands, if I remember correctly, on lands equal or above 4,000 square feet, I believe it was. And with those increases, many persons complained bitterly about the impact that would have on maintaining their properties. I know a lot of landlords in particular felt the squeeze as it relates to those increases. In addition to the increase, many persons thought it was quite unfair that those land tax bills came out early. And that also created some financial burden for many persons in terms of they had just settled the land tax for the previous year, and then they were hit with that bill earlier this year. And that created quite a stir among many persons in Barbados. But what I want to say this afternoon is I hope that some of the persons that were affected by the increase and then the early issuance of those bills, I hope that some of them actually benefit from the write-offs or the waivers that are being offered under this amendment. As the acting leader of government business noted, I also saw in the newspapers that the Barbados Revenue Authority had an auction plan for January and February 2020 to sell a number of properties that were on their books as it relates to those accumulated arrears and interest payments. And I hope that those who are now eligible seek to do the right thing if they can within their own financial capacity, try to get their business in order and to ensure that they retain ownership of their property. But sir, I want to quickly just make this intervention here today, and it relates more to residential properties, and to ask a question, a more fundamental question around taxing and assets such as residential property. This is something that's debated more or less around the world, and asks, is it equitable to even for a government to be taxing land and property that's owned by private individuals, particularly for residential dwellings? If you think about it, owning a piece of the rock is actually a part of what we would call the Barbadian dream. Everyone wants to grow up and own a piece of the rock. But when you place or increase the taxes on particularly residential dwellings or residential property, it is almost seen as punitive to own it's a disincentive, exactly, Mr. President, to those who would work hard, save, go to the bank, or if they have the funds, to purchase property, and then to turn around and pay the government a tax to live or own the property. And I say that because it would be quite different from, let's say, for instance, road tax. The previous type of road tax that we had, now that we have the fuel charge, I'm talking about the previous road tax that we had. You owned your private vehicle, but you still had to utilize the road. So there was some funds that needed to go into maintaining the road that you were driving on. Although you owned the vehicle, you still had to utilize that social good, which is the road. However, in a private dwelling, government doesn't really maintain anything on your property. So why am I paying a government to keep something that I already own? Maintain the environment, I am hearing. Thank you, Mr. President. But, sir, I can understand a tax being placed on private private properties that are used for business because you have some social responsibility as a company if you're using the land and property for profit-making activities to contribute towards society because you're making money off of that. The land and the property are an input into economic activity. But the residential dwellings, it can act as a disincentive for those who would want to purchase property or land. And some economists have argued that instead of placing the tax on improved valuations, you just place it on the unimproved value. And that actually acts as an incentive to increase the value of the property, Mr. President. So I know that it is an unpopular tax as well because it's one of those things that persons have to pay out a large sum of money to the government, unlike things like, let's say, income tax that some persons don't even see unless you're self-employed and you pay that yourself. Insurance is another payment that persons have to pay in a large chunk. But land tax is a very unpopular tax. It is one of those things that it is a large amount of money that persons have to pay out to a government, and if it, as I said, is a residential dwelling for something that you already own. And you can't adjust either, Mr. President, your behavior to compensate for the increase. If you increase VAT, then I would adjust my spending, so to speak, so that I don't feel the impact of a sales tax or a VAT increase. But I can't bulldoze half of my property if the government comes tomorrow and say I'm increasing land tax or property tax by 5%, if you understand where I'm going with the analogy. So it's one of those things that you have to pay, and the equity in it is really up for discussion. And I know that government has very little fiscal space at this time to change or possibly reduce the increases that they've implemented, because I noted that in the last central bank report, that 9% increase that we had in government revenues, one of the major contributors to that increase was actually the increase in payments and the early payment of that land tax. So that it is an effective tax in terms of collection of revenues, but it is also quite painful and discomforting for many individuals. So, sir, I just wanted to make that intervention this morning in case it's something that we look at in the future in terms of policy reform, in terms of how we look at assets, how we incentivize persons to improve the value of the land, improve their properties. And it may be something prudent in terms of the transformation of Barbados and get persons into the habit of acquiring assets rather than liabilities, Mr. President. And sir, I hope, as I said, that those persons who would have been under financial duress because of those increases, I hope that some of them benefit from the amendments before us in terms of the write-off, well, not the write-off because they still owe, but the waiver at least. And this is actually quite different from the VAT bill that we had, because VAT is something that you collect and you are a caretaker of that money that then needs to be paid to government. Land tax is something that you just simply have to pay because you have the asset in hand and you are obliged legally to make the payment. But nonetheless, sir, I support the bill. And with that intervention, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Mr. Deputy President, I really want to thank Senator Drakes for that intervention. I think she highlighted the fact that there are many different models that are used internationally for how we deal with taxation in a particular situation. And I can tell you that not every economist will agree with her. Some have said that it is a perfect tax. Since Adam Smith, it is most usually associated with, I believe it is Henry George. With regards to the movement of land tax, and that being something that is desirable and one very good way of collecting revenue. Given Barbados' current circumstance, it is the policy of this government that this is appropriate for the circumstance of the time. But we do thank you very much for highlighting the alternative models, and we recognize that not every economist will agree with you, including the ones on this side of the table. And sir, it is with those few words, sir, that I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time.
You may have appointed you as chairman. Oh, he's here.
Beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and this Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. Oh, I'm sorry.
Second time, really second time.
Oh, sorry. I beg to move, sir, that this bill be now read a second time.
The question is that the bill under consideration be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your indulgence in that regard. I now beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that I do now leave the chair, and that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of the bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee.
Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. It's three clauses.
There's no third clause? There's no third. There's only 2, yeah.
2.
Mr. President, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the President the passing of 1 bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of 1 bill in committee. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman, it is reported to me the passage of the bill under consideration committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a 3rd time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a 3rd time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Land Tax Amendment Act 2019.
question is that the measure under consideration do now pass and be so cited. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Messages from Her Excellency Governor General recommitted.
We now revisit the item messages from the Governor General. I'm to read to you the message just received. It's from Her Excellency the Governor General to the Honorable the Senate, and it reads as follows. Her Excellency the Governor General has the honor to inform the Honorable the Senate that she will be absent from the country during the period 23rd of December 2019 to 3rd of January 2020 on vacation leave. Her Excellency further has the honor to inform the Honorable the Senate that in accordance with the provisions of Section 29(1)(a) of the Constitution, Sir Kenneth Rudolph Hewitt, K.A., CBE, BJH, will perform the functions of the Office of Governor General for the period of Her Excellency's absence. Signed, Governor General. That concludes the message.
Mr. President, I believe this brings us to the end of today's business. I wish, sir, to extend Christmas greetings to all in the Senate, to all who have worked so tirelessly throughout this year in the Senate, as we believe this will be the last sitting of this honorable House in the year 2019. And, and for those here who do not celebrate Christmas, we wish you all the best for the holidays. With that, sir, I beg to move that we now adjourn sine die.
Just permit me, before I put the adjournment, to say that we are at the end of today's work, which we have conducted with admirable efficiency and economy. I too wish to reflect on the year's work and to say that we have been hardworking and very detailed in our consideration of the measures that have been brought before us. So I want to join in wishing you all a happy Christmas and a new year of good health and good fortune. And I wish to include in our good wishes the members of the staff, the support staff. Without them, we could not get ahead with our work. So I want to very especially wish them a happy Christmas to them and to their families, and a new year of good health and good fortune as well. I think we've now come to the end of our business for the year, and we can now take the adjournment. Without the date appointed.